Welcome to Lesson 5 in how to use the GEMulator for solo role-playing games. At this point, we have done quite a bit of the work. All right, so first we laid out the broad overview. How does the GEMulator think of a campaign? So we imagined first the broad overview of a campaign, which is composed of alternating adventures and campaign turns. The campaign turn composed of two pieces. One is the downtime that the player characters are experiencing. Secondly, are random events that are experienced by the rest of the world. And then we have this alternation. Adventure, campaign turn. Adventure, campaign turn, until finally the end of the campaign comes as we've played out the number of adventures necessary, we've accomplished or have failed to accomplish the campaign goal. Within each of those adventures, then, we described how there are scenes that compose that adventure. Then, in Lesson 2, we looked at how to use the GEMulator to do the broad campaign setup. Lesson number 3, looking at how to zoom in to the adventure level and how to make an adventure. And then finally, in Lesson number 4, we looked at how to play out scenes, how to transition from one scene to another, and finish out an adventure. Last thing we need to do then is look at the campaign turn, right? So we've finished out an adventure. Now we have a campaign turn. So what is happening now? Now here, there's a time to rest and reflect. So we want to think about our player character, what they just went through, what they're going to do in the meantime, as there's not yet another quest being given to them yet. Right, so what would they do? So I want to think about our character. So in the previous lesson, we had Japik has gone and has negotiated successfully for the release of Arzu, the sculptor. So I believe it's possible that we might see I'm not imagining that Japik's going to be doing much at all. So the kinds of things that we can imagine happening would be just resting. So this would be especially the case, say, if you got injured previously, if you were involved in some kind of battle or something like that. So I'm imagining there may be some resting going on, perhaps training some abilities, right? So after all, if he's going to be pulled into negotiation, it is at least possible that if you had a game system where you spend experience points or something like experience points to increase skills, it'd be believable to me that Japik would try to increase his negotiation skills after this particular thing. We could also see working a job if money is a big part of the system and the way that you like to play your games, or starting organizations or what have you. In my case, the exact content of downtime doesn't really matter that much. So what I'm thinking is going to happen in downtime is that really he's just developing relationships with the people that he has met in the previous adventure. So we're just going to make a note there, developing relationships. The next part of the campaign turn is the random events. Now, the random events are going to be governed in a couple ways by your campaign setup. So let me turn back to our original campaign setup. So the campaign setup has a couple elements. So one is that when you look at the scope, we have a universal scope, and that's going to tell me something about my campaign turn. So in our case, it says always roll for at least 3 global factions. So that's one thing. So when we're rolling random events, I need to roll at least 3 of them for 3 global factions. Another thing that is going to have an impact is the stakes. See here that says random event modifier is a minus 20. So whatever I roll, I need to subtract 20 off of it. And that is going to lead to events that are generally going to be somewhat less intense, right? So for example, if we look at just say here, if we have a random event that's conflict, one here is rumors of a distant conflict, whereas the highest is 50, that is death looms ever closer. So you're going to have this whole range of things that are going to happen, and naturally death looms ever closer is a bit more intense than something like rumors of a distant conflict. So we're going to have to remember to apply that negative 20 modifier whenever we make these rolls. We need at least 3 global factions. So what we work off of are 2 different potential lists. So we have our active lists from our previous adventure. So I can roll on that. I should actually use that list. And then also another decision I need to make when I put the next adventure together is how many of these characters, factions, locations are going to carry over into that next adventure. Right? So it's very possible that maybe the next adventure I have, I will have decided that the Kingdom of Akil has nothing to do with it. In which case, if I still want to keep the Kingdom of Akil in the background, I would add them to a background list, which if you look at the printouts, that would be considered part of the campaign log. The campaign log, you can see, has list for background characters, factions, and locations. Right, so if I decide that the Kingdom of Akil is not that important, whatever the next adventure is, then the kingdom gets moved on to the background faction if I think it's something that is still important to the campaign as a whole. Now, if I just apply it to the next active list, then I really don't have to make a record of it in that background faction. Okay, so, but right now we only have this one list from our first adventure, so that's what I'm going to be rolling on. So I need then a number of uh, random events. I need 3 of them applied to these factions. So all the factions I have 4 factions, Kingdom of Dan and Jay, Kingdom of Akil, this group of renegades that exists on the border of those two, and the Kingdom of Farid, which is where Japik is from. All of these are global factions, so they all count if I can get random events applied to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll one of them. I'm going to roll a d4. So I'm going to do that here in Roll20. So roll a d4, and it gives me 3. So it tells me this group of renegades. Something happens with them. So our first random event is going to be the group of renegades. So what happens with the group of renegades? Well, let's go check. So we have our random event table. This is on PDF page 30. Remember, the GEMulator is available for free on drivethrurpg.com. So if you want to try it out, definitely go there, get a copy of it. Then, what do we do? First, we're going to roll a d10 to determine what category of event we have. So roll a d10. And that gives me a 6. So this is something related to entertainment. Then we turn to the entertainment table, which is just a couple pages in. Oh, right, there it was, right here. So entertainment table on PDF page 32. Then I need to roll, that's a D50. So roll a D50. If you don't have a D50, because I don't know that I've ever physically seen one, you can roll D100, divide by 2, and then just round up. That also works. And with Roll20, you can just tell it to roll a D50, and it will do it. You just have to physically type in /roll50, roll and then D50, and it will, as if it's rolling a 50-sided die, that's how it's going to operate. So 15 is what I got. But remember, we have that modifier. Right? So that modifier of -20. So this 15 gets modified down to a -5. So -5, I would interpret very much like I did before. This is just read off the lowest number we have available. Right? So this group of renegades, there's some kind of small gesture that gives joy. So small gesture gives joy. I'm not going to try too hard to interpret that just yet. I'm going to try to put things together as we look at our other factions. So I need another faction. So I need to roll a d4. So d4, so faction number 2. So look at my faction list, that's the Kingdom of Akil. So something happens there. Kingdom of Akil. What's happening in the Kingdom of Akil? So for that, I need to, again, roll that d10. So get a 7. The 7 tells us it's something related to goals. So I look for the goals list, right there it is, and roll a d50. 18. So 18, though, -20, because of that modifier, 18 -20, so there's news of competing forces. Fighting for the same goal. All right, that's interesting. Next, I need to roll a d4 again. So now this is number 4, that's the Kingdom of Farid. So Kingdom of Farid, something is happening with them. What's happening with the Kingdom of Farid? Well, we'll roll a d10 to figure out our category. It's category number 4, which category number 4 is something related to technology or magic. Technology and magic, what is happening related to technology and magic? It's 10, but 10 -20, so it's some kind of refusal to innovate. All right, so these are the 3 random events that are happening. So we have a group of renegades there's some kind of small gesture that's giving them joy. The Kingdom of Akil, there's news of competing forces that are fighting for the same goal. And then the Kingdom of Farid, there's some kind of refusal to innovate. So we can detail these however much you wish. Another thing that it's a good idea to use these for is to think, can you come up with some adventure ideas that are related to these random events that will also help you move toward your campaign goal. So remember, our ultimate goal here, right, where the life story of Japik is headed, is that he's going to be involved with trying to hunt some big sea creature. in order to win a princess's hand. I don't know princess for which kingdom. We now have three kingdoms involved. And so, or maybe, right, maybe this group of renegades, maybe they have effectively some de facto royalty. There's a princess of this group. Maybe. This is a possibility. Right? So I need to think about what are things that could potentially be happening here that could create grounds for an adventure. So then, with adventure number two, I might not randomly create it. Instead, I know what is going to be coming up here. So where you record that, we do have here a campaign turn log where you would keep track of the various events that happen. So what's the target, the category, and the prompt, summary of what kind of details you flesh it out. So here we'd have things like, so target, group of renegades, category, entertainment, prompt, small gesture gives joy. And then we want to flesh out the details for this group of renegades. Who is the small gesture from, for example? I could see the Kingdom of Farad perhaps supporting these renegades in some small way. Right? So maybe sending them food or something like that. That's something that I could put in here as the summary. Maybe that's something where this is where we're going to see another adventure. After all, maybe Japik has to go along with a caravan to take this offering of food, the support of food, to this group of renegades. That'd be very believable. I could see that as a pretty good adventure, as a transportation adventure. And then we could see various complications potentially arising there. The Kingdom of Akil, that'd be the next one. So target, Kingdom of Akil, news of competing forces fighting for the same goal. So we need to think about what are the different competing forces? Is there some way in which Japik, who we know as a minor noble that has been involved in third-party negotiations before, there might possibly be some room here for somebody to step in and try to negotiate. And perhaps in doing so, he's going to get caught in a firefight or something, and we're going to end up seeing more combat skills develop. That's a possibility. Or in his own kingdom of Fair, we know there's a refusal to innovate. How is it that Japik, as a minor noble within that kingdom, is going to respond to this? Might there be some kind of quest coming, perhaps from those that want to innovate within the kingdom? Right. So maybe I could also easily see this moving toward Japik is kind of moving up in that kingdom through the ranks of the nobility by getting involved with some form of innovation on science or magic. So he is then forming alliances within his own kingdom. So these are all potential adventure seeds that we could come up with. So we would make a note of those as potential adventure hooks. We could also, if you want to write down what your downtime activities are, you can certainly do that as well. And so this would be another thing you could do. And also, if you want to have more random events than those that are required based on the scope of your campaign, you can certainly do that. I could say, well, I think something random is going to happen to one of the characters. And I could even pick which character, or I could roll again, just say, I want to see what happens to one of the characters. Roll a d4 to figure out which character it is. I could do that as well. So there's lots of flexibility here. I think really to capture the flavor of what the GEMulator is trying to do, I'm sticking with the minimum, because that way I know that I'm focusing on what's happening at the factional level. But you can do what you want. And again, that is the joy of solo role playing. So that is the last of these lessons that I'm planning to put together now. So you have now seen examples, first of kind of the big picture of what the GEMulator is trying to do. You've also now seen the different elements that are involved with that. The creation of the campaign, the creation of the adventure, how the scenes play out and can impact each other, and then these campaign turns that exist between the adventures, and how you can use these random events to come up with adventure hooks that could then lead to the next adventure, and the next one, and the next one, all the way to the conclusion of your campaign. So I hope that this series of videos has been somewhat helpful to you. Again, pick up the GEMulator from drivethrough-rpg.com. It's a fantastic tool that you can really use to get into solo role-playing games. Thank you very much for tuning in, and all the best. Happy gaming.